But we're gonna talk about two massive points here. We're gonna break down the game, but we're also going to talk about DJU. Is it a new year, same DJU? I think is a big discussion that you and I need to have here. But what were your key takeaways in this game with Georgia Tech?
First of all, as I say every time that we do this show, and we both do this, whenever we're wrong, we will always admit that we're wrong.
No doubt.
We will always be first to come on here and admit that we were wrong about something. It's part of, if we're going to be on the far side of being confident in our picks, and if we're off, we're going to sit here and admit it. I was wrong about Brent Key for criticizing the hire. I was wrong about Georgia Tech being prepared to play in this game. I was 1,000,000% wrong. I think, honestly, by the way, it is an issue that a lot of other analysts have where they double down when they have stupid takes. It's one of the things that bothers the hell out of me when these analysts continue to double down when they're wrong. So Georgia Tech fans, y'all got me. I was completely off on here. And what I was wrong about was how prepared Georgia Tech was in this game and how much more that they wanted it. They clearly looked on a snap-to-snap basis after that first drive where they gave up the touchdown to Florida State that they wanted to win that damn game. And Florida State looked like they were on vacation. Looked like they went on a field trip to Ireland. It looked like they were not there to fight for 4 quarters. And it was epitomized by how badly they got pushed around on their defensive line, which on paper is one of the most gifted in the country, but they got smacked by an O-line that is extremely technically refined. I thought it was a masterclass by Georgia Tech's offensive coordinator. Just an overall great day for the Yellow Jackets on Saturday.
So you hit on a couple of key points. Look, the game was won up front by Georgia Tech. Josh Pate came out with a stat. He posted on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Florida State only had the football once with 21 minutes plus left in the game, which is absolutely ridiculous. Okay. However, that is what it is. But the reason they were able to have that is because their offensive line, who ran a lot of trap counter, ran a lot of zone read, Joe, they physically dominated them up front. Yeah. And then on critical third downs, that defensive line, and arguably the best-looking pulse linebacker in the country with a cowboy collar, was out there making plays. I thought Emory Harvey made exceptional plays. Joe, there's also a big thing that nobody's talking about. Georgia Tech had to come out in this situation. Defensively, they were bad last year. They were bad at times defensively.
Yeah.
They were elite. Not good, not great. Elite at tackling in the open field. And on multiple fourth downs, on multiple third downs, that's what forced them. But another key thing in this game, Alex Atkins, the OC for Florida State, was serving a 1-game suspension, and it wouldn't have mattered because not only did Georgia Tech want it more and they pushed guys around, Joe, Mike Norvell critically got out-coached on third down. You cannot go 5 for 12 on third down and be efficient. DJ, you are not. But the truth was, Joe, is we look at the portal and we look at so many times these teams, like Florida State a year ago, when you bring in this much talent, we say, man, they're just gonna reload. And that's not what happened here. What I think happened is we didn't account for how big Braden Fisk and I forget Fabian Lovett, who was the other defensive tackle that they had too.
Yep.
Joe, you had 3 NFL defensive linemen that got replaced. You brought some really good guys in. And I see Florida State fans saying, oh, it's linebacker play. No, you got pushed around on your defensive line.
Well, it was both. Well, the linebackers had a bad game too.
Joe,
but you're 100% right.
Joe, did you see the stat from the third quarter on? The Florida State defensive line, on average, on third down runs, got pushed off the ball 4.4 yards. That is, Joe, if that offensive line does that, that is not good offensive line play. That's elite offensive line play.
Well, I'm not disagreeing. I'm not by any means disagreeing that Florida State's defensive line, they got smoked. The one kid, I'm blanking on his name, the 6'5", 330-pounder that they brought in, he's supposed to be this big hulking mass that's supposed to clog rushing lanes, and he was getting driven off the ball every single play. That you can't be that big and be getting your ass whooped when you're supposed to be the guy that anchors the defensive line in the interior. But the linebackers, though, the thing that I thought was really lame, And we have spoken highly of Adam Fuller, who's the Florida State defensive coordinator. They were hesitant in all their reads, and give a lot of credit to the offensive play calling with all these counters that they were running. They were hesitating like crazy. They didn't know what was going on, and they were catching blockers. They weren't coming downhill trying to pop guys in their chest, stack and shed, try to get around anybody. They were catching blockers, and they were getting their asses kicked.
Well, and here's the truth. They executed the big runs. They executed them really well. The Haynes kid at running back for Georgia Tech.
Jamal Haynes. He's a dude, man.
Jesus Christ, man. That kid can play. That's a real playmaker that they have.
That's a draft prospect right there.
Here's what I really think the game came down to when it was all said and done. Haynes King made more plays than DJU. And I don't think that you can look at Haynes King, and I know that DJU had that great fourth quarter. But, Joe, going into the third quarter with 2 minutes left on third, I think it was 12, Haynes King makes an elite throw across the middle, first down. They go down and score on that drive. The very next play is a 20-yard run on a quarterback draw where he's pushing a pile. I think when it came down to it, Haynes got his team down the field when they vastly needed it. There were massive times, or two times in the third quarter and once in the fourth quarter, where I'm like, DJ, you got to go, like, you got to throw the ball down the field. But brings me to the point. I don't know how much look, DJU did not play great, and I don't want to say that he did. The simple nature that Mike Norvell was so tentative in forcing the ball down the field lost them the football game, because they were sending so much heat in the fourth quarter. Joe, what happened when they opened it up? DJU actually was making really good throws on fourth down when you allowed him to do it. Now, we're going to talk about DJU in a deeper light here in a moment. But, Joe, you can't take away those fourth quarter throws from him. And I think the inability at times to push the ball down the field. What did Georgia Tech do? Joe, they're sending far free safety blitzes on third down saying, hey, man, we know good and goddamn well that you are not going to throw the ball deep on us, and we don't trust DJU to complete the pass anyway. Why wouldn't we send the house? They outcoached them at every single level, and that is what I felt like leaving the game. I'm like, man, if you would just push the ball down the field a little bit more, you might have won it.
Yeah, huge props to Tyler Santucci, who came in from Duke, who was previously, he was actually on Elko's staff at Texas A&M on the defensive staff there. Credit to him, the way that he coached up that game. You depicted perfectly how that defense schemed things up, where there was very rarely safety help over the top. They brought their safeties down. They sent 6 guys often in the second half. There was no counter, and I think that Norvell was the one who was calling the plays. There was no counter to what was being sent at them. There was no willingness to take shots early that set them up for this failure in the way that the game was played. I think a lot does go on DJU's shoulders, which, again, we're going to talk about in a quick second. But Norvell, in his decision-making, a lot of that does go on him for not setting up the kid to succeed. It was a perfect recipe for an offensive mess and a disaster. And you can tell that Alex Atkins was prepared for this game, because the opening drive, which I would assume was probably scripted by him, was perfect. It was a diverse rushing game plan that they had with some very different rushing plays that they oriented in, a couple of good passes that were thrown, and then there was just nothing but redundancy. It was screens, and they kept running these stupid jet sweeps over and over again that kept getting stopped at the line of scrimmage. At what point do you not try to get creative? They waited until the fourth quarter to do it.
Well, hold on. Let me throw this out there. I'm not arguing with you. I'm not trying to say got you on this or not.
Okay.
We had a conversation a week ago today about I was very skeptical of Florida State's offensive line. Joe, they got pushed around.
Oh, wait, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I don't think that Florida State offensive line played that bad.
So after the Tola-Philly 27-yard run, okay, get this. He had a 27-yard run for a touchdown. He had 5 yards after that. After Roydale Williams' 17-yard run in the opening quarter, he got 15 yards after that. By the way, they combined for – hold on 1 second. They combined after that for another 20 carries. So the point in that is, yeah, you're right. The opening drive, they were clapping some cheeks. I'll give that to you. Joe, how do you explain, legitimately, how can you explain that offensive line was not getting pushed around and there wasn't elite tackling when you're barely running the football after?
Well, yes, there was elite tackling by Georgia Tech. They did a very fantastic job. It was a masterclass on run fits, squaring guys up, tackling, bringing them to the ground on first contact. That was a great job by Georgia Tech. But where I would provide an explanation, once Georgia Tech realized that they were going to load the box and then put everybody on the outside in one-on-one coverage, it is really hard to run the ball when there's that many guys in the box. And I think that offensive line was set up for failure.
That's fair.
Also on the passing plays where DJU was pressured, he was holding the ball too long. I don't necessarily disagree with your take that they didn't play as good as they could have.
They got no push is what I'm trying to say. After that first drive, you and I both know they got zero push. Now, again, to your credit, but here's the thing, though, with Florida State. Now, I know it's only one game. You've still got a lot to play for in a 12-team playoff. Joe, you can't do that shit against Miami. And I know Miami plays Florida this week. Oh, man, oh, man, I'm so excited.
I swear to God, if Miami loses that game and our predictions just go completely haywire, I might give up.
I'm going to shit all over the ACC. Miami's not doing that. But here's another thing. You know who you can't do that to? Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, look, let me just say this now. You know, in the beginning of the season, we were talking about Florida and logo watching. Are you 1,000% sure that Florida can't win that game?
It's a good point, the way that we just saw Georgia Tech push them around, and we know that that's Florida's bread and butter.
Got some dudes up front now. They
got some decent backs. Well, and the other thing, just to revisit really quickly what you just brought up about Miami, we painted this picture, and I brought up this point during our ACC preview.
Have them winning the ACC.
The point that I brought up, do you remember when I said that we can't trust DJU in a situation where if you go down by 10 to Miami, he's not going to be able to climb back in. He's not the type of guy to climb back in. That we just were affirmed on that when watching that game on Saturday.
Okay. Let's get to that then.
Okay.
Joe, listen, I tweeted this out midway through the second quarter. It's all I needed to see. New year, same DJU. Mm-hmm. Here's what I honestly believe is happening. I think the kid's very smart. What I'm about to say is not a shot at his intelligence. I truly don't believe that he has any idea what coverages he's seeing at any given moment. I really don't. Because, Joe, here's the reason why. That fourth quarter drive that he put together when he knew it was man-to-man coverage, what did he do? I mean, the kid's got traits. He's got a good arm. He's mobile. He's 250 pounds. I mean, he can run a little bit. Mm-hmm. What's the problem? Joe, I really believe that this kid has no idea what he's saying. And I think that in and of itself has plagued him literally his entire career. I know he makes some bad throws. I know he does some bad things. But, Joe, you can't explain those fourth quarter throws to me and tell me that when he knows, he can make good throws. But, Joe, we were talking about this during y'all's live watch party on Hack City.
Yeah.
There are literally some throws that he makes into the third level of the stands, bro. Like, you're throwing a basic hitch route and you're throwing that thing 3 layers into the stands.
Yeah.
There comes a part, Joe, if they're going to stick with DJU. Now, this loss is not on him. And we cannot put this loss on him either. But if you're going to stick with him, man, it's going to be a long season. It's going to be a very long season if you stick with him.
And I don't want to – I know a lot of people were kind of dunking on him as much as they could yesterday. I'm not going to go as far as to do that.
It didn't look like he got any better.
Well,
that's why they're dunking on him.
What I was going to say, though, is that it looks like a kid whose confidence is so shot.
I agree.
He just doesn't know how to process what's happening on the field. And, I mean, that's – hey, look, full circle. I'm blaming Dabo for something. I kind of blame Dabo for his lack of development, it feels like – hold on.
You can't do that anymore. You can't.
Yes, I can.
No,
yes, I can.
Then Jonathan Smith and Mike Norvell suck? And let me ask you this question.
Wait. Him and his youngest was when his confidence was destroyed.
Hold on. No, BS. Hold on. Then why didn't Mike Norvell trust him enough to push the ball down the field?
Because he saw him in practice not being able to do it.
So you have two coaches. You have three coaches. One that's won 2 national titles, and we're blaming that shit on Dabo. No, the kid is not.
All right, I realize how little crazy that sounds.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous.
All right. No, it's not ridiculous. Dabo did cook his confidence. His confidence is completely shot, and it's just a culmination of a lot of bad play.
It's not Dabo's responsibility once he leads his program to build his confidence.
To get back what I was gonna say though, he is extremely skittish. He is extremely hesitant. He sits in the pocket. He overanalyzes things. He had a lot of clean pockets and a lot of time to decide what to do with the ball. And he was very, very indecisive, which was an issue that we knew coming into the season and something that we talked about. I think his biggest problem for a kid who has the arm to uncork it and to deliver to guys in tight windows, there are too many times on film. And in this game, there were a couple of throws where he had one that was like on the left sideline that was... They were on like the 40-yard line and would have put them right in the red zone. He underthrew a guy and he dropped it later on in the game. There was a hitch route earlier on in the game that he completely underthrew a guy. You can't be underthrowing receivers like that. And you can tell that right as the ball's coming out and he's about to throw it, he's thinking to himself as subconsciously as possible, oh my God, I don't want to overthrow this guy. I don't want to mess up this throw. I don't want to put this ball in the wrong place and for him to miss it. And then he's throwing it too low. His just general confidence seems to be extremely cooked. And I stand by what we said in the offseason. I don't think that they can get where Florida State wants them to be with DJU playing quarterback. Part of me does wonder at some point, do you switch to Brock Glenn and do you just let Brock Glenn get out there?
Here's the thing about that. He didn't lose you the football game though. Okay. And here's another thing. Joe, as much we've put a lot on Florida State's plate. We haven't talked enough about Georgia Tech. All I will say is, Joe, before the bad snap with Haynes King and the receiver getting hit and all that, they had 200 rushing yards. No, you got pushed around up front. That's what happened to you. But here's my question that I have to you. Is Georgia Tech a contender?
I'm not going to go that far. Look, Georgia Tech played a really good game. I think that there are still some deficiencies because they did.
Like what? Like what?
They did complete a number of key passes when they needed to. But I don't know if they're going up against a more potent offense, if they can generate the types of splash plays. This was a perfect opportunity for them to pull out an upset win. The main thing that I'm pointing out here, they had one of the hardest schedules at the start of the season. One of the hardest schedules. It is going to be a gauntlet. I think that they proved to me they can finish with a strong record and play in a really good bowl game. When you say contender, what do you mean? Like they could be in the ACC championship conversation? I think that would require them to have an unreal run of a season. And I would need to see Haynes King do a little bit more for me as a passer. He was great as a runner in this game. He was phenomenal as a runner, but he can't miss on some of those balls that he overthrew throughout the game.
Joe, he only missed 5 passes though.
They didn't throw the ball that much though.
But you're talking about he can't miss on some of those passes, but he's still a 70% completion percentage guy in the game yesterday.
Yeah, but the completions that he had were the plays that were really well schemed up and that were easily deliverable throws.
Do you think he's hurt, like Sean said? Or your co-host on the other show, do you think he's hurt?
I did. There was one play in the beginning of the game where they were in the red zone and he ran the ball. It looked like he got crumpled up on. Part of me kind of thinks that might be part of it. I don't know. I'm just speculating there.
Well, here's the thing. If that is the case and that's true, and they beat him with a hobbled Haynes King, what happens when 37 touchdown Haynes King comes back? Here's the only thing I'd say. I think they're very well coached. I think that their staff is freaking really good. And that they outcoached a team that should have been in a playoff last year, and they got pushed around. Look, Brent Key, for what it's worth, an offensive line guy. Joe, I don't give a shit who they go up against. They're going to be a tough out for everybody. Could they lose to other teams on their schedule? Sure, But I bet you there's nobody in the ACC right now that wants to play him. Nobody.
Yeah, that part I don't disagree with. I think that Georgia Tech is going to give every team that they play hell, like we just saw what they did to Florida State. And here's to now their disadvantage for every other game going forward. They have on tape knowing that they can't pussyfoot around with them. I think Florida State walked into that game thinking like, oh, this is Georgia Tech. We're going to be completely fine. I think a lot of teams are going to put in the necessary work to not get upset by Georgia Tech. I do agree with you that they are going to knock off somebody that they're going to be as another underdog again. It's going to happen again this season.
Here's the last thing I'm going to say on this game before we move forward, because we got a lot to get to. Mike Norvell got abused in coaching on third down.
Yeah,
they got abused, and if they don't fix that which Alex Atkins will come back, boy oh boy.
This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in, because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today, because you can get the first month. Personal training is expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code RuffinoJoe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.